Welcome to Get Over It, the consciousness transforming podcast for exceptional 21st century living. We have a very fascinating show today. We're going to go to the dark side. We're going to be speaking with Dr. Connie Zweig, and her latest book is Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path, the Dance of Darkness and Light in Our Search for Spiritual Awakening. And you know, sometimes folks, we get all caught up in the light, and we forget that there's an opposite, the shadow. And it's just as important to explore and understand the shadow as it is to explore and understand the light. And Dr. Connie will enlighten us on this more in a few moments. Now, the information shared on Get Over It uses intuitive and pragmatic insight to help you shift your consciousness to break through blocks and release energy that is no longer needed. Yes, we're going to help you let go of the BS that's been holding you back. But you guys know I always ask, are you truly ready to? And by the way, folks, BS is belief system. A bit about me for my new listeners: intuitive since birth. I'm a third generation intuitive with over 3 decades of experience supporting people to break through the blocks along their path. I'm a strategist for personal and professional transformation, revealing cutting edge information that enables you to prosper and thrive. I spent 25 successful years in corporate America as an executive sales professional, and I'm the founder of Healing Visions Ministries and the Northern California Children's Education Network, a 501c3 nonprofit. I provide consultations and healings in all areas of life that heal the mind-body-spirit connection, allowing you to live your very best life. Now, my clients tell me that I keep it real while providing them with accurate information to assist them along their journey as a spirit living a human existence. But they also say, if you really don't want to know, don't ask Monique. My background includes a doctorate in metaphysics, Reiki master teacher, ordained minister, and clinical hypnotherapist. So whether you are stressed, depressed, or possessed, I can help. To find out more about me and the services I offer, go to my website, thismoniquechapman.com. And I invite you to like and follow me on Facebook and LinkedIn. My guest today, Dr. Connie Zweig, is a retired psychotherapist and former executive editor at Jeremy P. Tarcher Publishing, and is co-author of Meeting the Shadow and Romancing the Shadow, and author of the bestseller, The Inner Work of Age, Shifting from Role to Soul, and a novel, A Moth to the Flame, The Life of a Sufi Poet, Rumi. She has been practicing and teaching meditation for more than 50 years. She's a mom, she's a grandma, she's an all-round just wonderful person. And she's a wife too. Don't let me forget about that. And you can check her out at her website, and I'm going to spell it for you: ConnieZweig.com. Again, that's ConnieZweig.com. Welcome, Connie.
Hi, Monique. So for some reason, that bio is missing the new book title.
Oh, what's your new book title?
So what we're here to talk about is Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path. And that just came out a couple of months ago.
Yeah, and I mentioned that right at the top of the show. So we're going to delve right into Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path, the Dance of Darkness and Light in Our Search for Awakening. Such a great title, and you do a lot of work with this shadow side. So I applaud you for that, because so many are focused on the light. They forget that we have a, opposite side. It's important to know who we are in total. So tell us overall why this book. You've written so many books on the shadow work. Why this particular book?
Well, I started meditation at 19 when I was very young, and became enthralled with sitting practice and my longing for the divine, my longing for connection with the transcendent, or what we now call non-duality. And I spent a number of years in that organization until it began to go bad. And what was kind of an open system became very hierarchical. People began to lie and compete for practices. Money became more and more of an issue. And so I left that group, and that experience really stayed with me. And as I began to explore research spiritual communities today, I discovered how many people are going through similar experiences of religious betrayal, spiritual trauma, and disillusionment. Whatever the denomination, whether in a Christian church or a Jewish synagogue, with a Swami or a Roshi or a yoga teacher or a Lama, Tibetan Lama, there are a lot of scandalous allegations about charismatic teachers acting out, and spiritual communities becoming coercive and cult-like. And so I wanted to apply what I've learned from depth psychology about how our unconscious minds work, how the shadow operates. I wanted to apply that to our spiritual lives.
Okay, well, you've definitely done a great job doing this. And I want to ask you this question up front before we delve in a little bit more. Do you separate religion and spirituality, or do you consider them intertwined?
Well, religion is very institutionalized in the West, and spirituality tends to be more unaffiliated with lineages or denominations, although there are spiritual people in every religion and religious people in every spiritual tradition, right? So my focus is not so much on that. It's more on the universal longing or yearning that people feel, whether they're in organized religions or small spiritual groups. There is the soul's yearning for the beloved, is what the poets call it. And that longing is what brings us to clergy or gurus in order to feel a connection to the divine and find practices that work for us.
Okay, wonderful. I just was wondering if there was a difference, because I make a strong demarcation between the two. Religion is one way and spirituality is another. Now, your book, the underpinnings of it seem to rest on two words to me, and that's holy longing. What is holy longing, and how does it help us?
So it's what I was just talking about. It's that restless whisper in us for more, that intuition that knows there's more than the material world. There's more, that I am more than what I do. I am more than my roles. I am a bit of God, spirit, essence, Buddha nature, Christ nature, whatever our language is for this. There is a part of us that longs for that, the recognition of that, and the connection to something beyond ego. And the famous poet Goethe called this the holy longing.
Okay. And when you delve in and connect with your holy longing, does it accelerate you on your path, whether you choose the religious route or any other spiritual route?
Well, this is very individual. So some people are aware of this yearning for more, and some people are not. but it may be guiding them anyways. So our yearning can bring us to teachers and communities, but it can also lead us astray. So if we are drawn to a charismatic teacher and we believe we can only connect to the divine through that person, and it turns out that that person is human, he has a shadow, or she has unhealed wounds, or maybe authoritarian tendencies, and then begins to act out, let's say, power, sex, or money, then our longing has led us to a place, to a dark night of the soul, to a meeting with the shadow on the spiritual path. It doesn't mean that we're off the path, because most traditions actually include this moment, like dark night of the soul. They have different names for it. So this doesn't mean that we're off the path, but it means that our longing has landed on an inappropriate object that is not treating us with kindness and compassion, even though those may be the words.
Okay, could you give us an example of that, please?
So in chapter 5 of the book, there are dozens and dozens of examples of teachers in different traditions who are acting out their dark sides, even though they claim to be in advanced stages of awakening or enlightenment. And that was like a paradox that I really tried to understand, and found some very interesting explanations for how this could be happening. So for some examples, people might have heard of Osho, who used to be called Rajneesh, and how, people who followed him to India and then to Oregon had ecstatic experiences. Many of them reported profound spiritual insight. And at the same time, the community really turned dark. There were guns, there were drugs, there was conflict with the police. There is a film about this called Wild Wild Country that's really worth watching. It's a documentary on Netflix. And what I found is that there is a pattern in all these communities that's the same. So, for example, in a Tibetan Buddhist community in Boulder, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche founded the Shambhala community, and Naropa University. Naropa became a famous university there. And he was sexually assaulting women, and he was alcoholic. And at the same time, he, like Osho, he wrote brilliant books. Brilliant wisdom was being transmitted, and yet he was living out a lot of shadow material. And then the man who he appointed to be his heir also was sexually assaulting people, knowing that he had AIDS, and actually gave HIV to several of his students. And there are many, many stories like this of people in every tradition who somehow have a spiritual line of development that may be highly refined, and yet get stuck in moral development or emotional development. And because those are undeveloped, they act out shadow material. They act out the remains of ignorance in their need for power, or their greed for money, or their desire for sex. And some of it is cultural differences, because a lot of them come from other cultures that may be monastic or sexist and patriarchal. And then they come here and, they're faced with these huge cultural differences, and they get lost. And so my question in the book is two-sided. What is going on in the psychology and the unconscious of these teachers? They may be priests and ministers and rabbis also. Or what is going on in the unconscious psychology of the devotees, the believers, the seekers? And how do those two meet? How does the unmet childhood needs in the seeker, maybe the need for belonging, or for an ideal parent, or for love and approval. How do those needs meet up with the teacher who needs to be adored, needs to be worshiped, needs to deny that he's having sex? You know, a lot of them say they're celibate, but they're having sex. Or
Right.
needs to accumulate Rolls Royces and private jets and so on. So
Well,
how do those psyches meet? And that was a central question for me.
It's remains a central question for me because and this is my, like personal, I guess, wall, if you will. I find it difficult, especially, and that's why I don't go the religious route. When I was 16, I was raped by the preacher in the church. Okay. And then you hear about the Catholics and, the having sex with the kids. If they had sex with an adult, that's their business. But with a child, which is wrong in society altogether, I don't understand how they can justify what they did with it. In my case, it was justified with God forgives. And, I was scarred for life at that point. And so how do people follow that? And then how do people still stay in that same role with other people just believing in them? It's like people take off your blinders or something. I don't understand that. Could you help me, walk me through that in the same vein, helping someone else in the audience?
Monique, I'm so sad to hear that happened to you. And it's not that unusual.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, tragically. Yeah. And it's not only in organized religion, it's also in a lot of these more mystical, esoteric groups that some of this is going on. Bikram, the founder of hot yoga, was a total sexual predator. I mean, there are documented reports of this going on in all these different arenas. So how can I explain this? So some of it, in some cases, is about celibacy and male teachers who are repressing their sexuality, their needs and desires, whether they're priests or swamis or yogis. And some of it is about, that the shadow is anything that is unacceptable or taboo or shameful in that person's psychology. It's not opposite, as you were saying initially. It's only opposite ego. So that we present the ego to the world and we learn what that means. As a child, it means we're kind, we're polite, we're empathic, we do well, we're productive, and so on. And the traits that are shamed or punished go into the shadow. So maybe as an intuitive, about the subtle body and the chakras. So there is shadow material in every chakra. So if there's shadow material in the second chakra, which is about sexuality, in that priest or minister, and he's unaware of it, he is at risk of acting that outside of his ego's control. It can erupt outside of his control. And if he's in a position of authority, especially if he's narcissistic, then he's going to feel immune to consequences. And what happens is that the systems, the institutions are kind of built to protect them and enable them. They don't want to take down the institutions. We've seen this with the Catholic Church since the 1980s now, that they have been basically paying to get rid of these legal cases, hundreds of millions of dollars now since the 80s, and have done nothing to change the system that allowed for all of this childhood sexual abuse to happen. Right? So the same thing happens in these other systems. They don't want to lose their empires. And so the systems act like alcoholic families where the leader / father is narcissistically acting out and abusing someone. The other members of the family or the community are keeping secrets and enabling this person in order to prop up the image of the community. In some cases, the leader is drinking alcohol or with Osho using drugs. And the secret is the glue that holds it all together until somebody has the resilience to move from being a witness or survivor to being a whistleblower and speaking the truth and filing a legal case or speaking out to the press. Until someone is able to do that, all of these secrets are holding the church or the Sangha together. And so this is just like an alcoholic family. And, you know, people who grew up in alcoholic families will unconsciously resonate with the system. It will feel familiar to them. And they may be attracted to it. And if they believe that this clergy person is their only intermediary to God or the most enlightened person on the planet, then they're going to obey. They're going to keep silent. They're going to do everything they can to continue to have that special relationship. And I interviewed many, many women who had sex with their clergy or their gurus or their shamans or their roshis for just that reason. They had many rationalizations, you know, it's good for my evolution. I feel special. He'll never hurt me. You know, I feel chosen. And so the question then becomes, what is consent? Can a woman consent in the circumstances when the man holds her spiritual well-being in his power? If he says to her, if you don't do this, your whole family will go to hell, can she consent? Or if you don't do this, you know, you'll have bad reincarnations for lifetimes. Can she really consent? And so this system gets set up where that dynamic is frozen in place, sometimes for years. I just was talking to a woman who had a sexual relationship with Maharishi, who brought TM to the world. For many, many years, he was saying he was celibate to the world, and she was having sex with him for many years.
Wow.
And she was keeping the secret because she felt chosen and special. So, yeah.
She felt chosen, special to reinforce his lie.
She felt chosen by him because he told her that she was the only one he was having sex with.
Yeah, but he's having sex and he's telling the others, no, he's not. So it's a lie.
And he's telling other people to be celibate. So that hypocrisy is poisoning the system. And, you know, when I did this research, it was very disturbing because this is epidemic in spiritual communities, not just religious communities.
Oh, yes.
In alternative spiritual communities, it's epidemic. And it's not only about sex. I had someone tell me, you know, my guru started out asking for tithing, and then he asked for a portion of our income. And then when our parents died, he wanted the estates. He wanted all the land and the property that was left to us. So there's financial coercion going on as well. And we see some of these teachers enriching themselves when their students are, you know, doing seva or service for pennies.
It's just mind-boggling to me how people can be so controlled like that? I mean, where's our objective thinking? I know we've been programmed, as children to a certain degree, but at some point we have the ability to rationalize things for ourselves. And it just seems weird. And I completely agree with you 10,000% about the abuse, if you will, in the spiritual community. I was shocked. I was really shocked. So I guess it's important overall just to be aware of what you're dealing with. I don't have the answer to get around it.
Well, I teach people how to learn shadow awareness, how to recognize when you're in denial, when your own shadow is activated, because you're projecting onto this person parts of yourself. You want certainty, you want answers, you want to be told how to live. Then certain material is going into your shadow, like you just mentioned, critical thinking. It's being buried. Lots of authentic feelings are being buried in the shadow, like anger and grief, because those are not acceptable in spiritual communities. And our capacity for agency to act on our own behalf is being buried in the shadow because of what I've been talking about, how invested we get in this relationship and in feeling belonging and in fear of being excommunicated and being alone without meaning and purpose. And so there is a lot to lose when we leave a community, as I discovered for myself. At the same time, the second half of the book is about spiritual shadow work. How do we reclaim all these lost parts of the self that belong to us, that belong in our own treasury, our own spiritual light, our own essence that we've given away to someone else, our own independent thinking and authentic feelings, our own bodily instincts, our gut instinct. I had a woman say to me, my body kept telling me it was dangerous, but I wasn't listening. So our bodily instincts are buried in the shadow. And so we end up in denial and rationalization. I call it spiritual rationalization. People say to me, well, he couldn't be doing that or he wouldn't be enlightened. There are just all kinds of ways that people rationalize the bad behavior in order to stay in the community.
To get more, I guess, information or whatever. It's amazing.
It's not just information. It's having a place for our holy longing. So if that teacher is the object of our longing, and we believe that he or she is our salvation or our path to enlightenment, it's very profound. It's a very deep and devotional relationship for many people, and so it's not easy to give up on it and leave. And it's not always the answer. Leaving is not always the answer. I mean, I give some examples in the book of people who stayed and really helped to redesign their communities, to reimagine them and redesign and rebuild. So it's very individual answers. And for people who might be listening to us and suffering from this kind of betrayal and trauma, there's guidance in the book about how to recover. And I also want to invite people who are interested in reading the book. I'm creating free online groups that are organized by your time zone. And so if you want to send me an email, conniezweig@gmail.com, you can put spiritual shadow work in the subject line and send me your time zone, and I will connect you to other people to read together in community online. They're free and leaderless groups, and do this work together. And there are hundreds of groups now all over the world that are doing this spiritual shadow work.
Well, that's excellent. And I'm glad that you're putting that out there. Now, at the same time that your book, Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path, is out, there is another book that you also have out. I don't have a copy of it, but please tell us the title and tell us about the book, please.
Well, in my career of exploring and writing about the shadow, 30 years as a psychologist and people coming to me with their unconscious issues. When I entered my late 60s and began to think about retirement, I was looking for material to read about the unconscious attitudes and beliefs and images that we have about aging. And I couldn't find anything. There was not a single book about it. So I wrote The Inner Work of Age, Shifting from Role to Soul, and explored how people can really detect these inner obstacles that are unconscious and begin to make them conscious, like, say, the inner ageist, the way that we've internalized ageism from our culture and end up hating ourselves and our bodies as we age. So there are different unconscious dynamics going on that will keep us from a fulfilling experience of the later stage of life. And the spiritual work that for me is involved with aging is to begin to shift our identities from role, what we do, to soul, who we really are. And as we begin spiritual practices and find the right contemplative work that fits us and do our psychological homework around cleaning up the past, then we can begin to make this shift in identity, which for me is really the spiritual intention of the new longevity. We have all these extra years now to do spiritual practice and to really move into another level of consciousness.
Yes. And, I find it interesting being in that 70-ish, age group, that going from role to soul, when it's happening. It's like this silent but visible awareness in your psyche, and it prepares you, should you pay attention, for what's next. And I'm finding it to be a beautiful experiment.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah. Well, our time is almost up, but I'd love for you to give us a pearl of wisdom that the audience can take from either this book or just your general knowledge.
I think for anyone listening, there are resources to help you go deeper in your own self-reflection and your own self-knowledge. And even if you're very busy with work and building a career, or you're an activist in social justice areas, or you're raising a family, whatever your circumstances, you can find some time every day to be self-reflective and to do some inner work and connect with your shadow, connect with the blind spots that are outside of the light of awareness, and see how they're affecting you, whether they're affecting you in your intimate relationship, where you keep having the same fights, or a friendship, or with a child, or an adult child, or a parent, or a grandparent. How is the shadow kind of sabotaging your conscious intentions? And what do you need in order to make an internal shift to live a more conscious life? So that's my invitation, and every one of my books is about that. Romancing the Shadow focuses on relationships, and The Inner Work of Age focuses on midlife and beyond. And Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path focuses on our spiritual relationships. And so if you're interested in reading that last book, as I said, with other people, you can shoot me an email, conniezweig@gmail.com. And please don't forget to give me your time zone, and I will send you to a group to do this work together.
All right. Thank you very much. Dr. Connie, we appreciate you joining us today and sharing your insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monique, for your time.
No problem. And I know the audience appreciates listening, and I appreciate the audience's time and their attention. But everyone, please remember, the most important choice that you can make is what you choose to make important. Consider making the masterful choice of meeting the shadow on the spiritual path. Abundant blessings, light, and love to all. Agape.